folks, and welcome back to Four Corners of the Galley. I'm your host PBO, and you're joining me on another edition of Unsolved, the murders of Biggie and Tupac. And we're all the way up to episode 8, Tupac Amaru Shakur. That's right, the episode 8 is called Mr. Tupac Amaru Shakur. So let's start this sucker off. Let's just say I hated this episode. Let me just preface and say why I hated it. So I was so hyped the minute I saw that this episode was named after Tupac, and I was like, wow, we're going to get a whole episode about Tupac, and we're going to really dig into some stuff and have some great, maybe some backstory and show me some things that maybe I had no idea about, maybe give me a little insight into some certain things. Nope. They teased us. Now, this episode starts off beautifully, and what we do get is very touching, and it hits your heart hard because it hurts, but they delve so deep into the task force and the task force cops and their families. Man, that bothered me. How do you call it episode Tupac and then give you 6 minutes of Tupac? Like, that just bugged me. All right, so we're gonna do what we do every week. This week we're gonna do the Tupac and Afeni line, which is very small. Then I'm gonna jump to Pool, and then I'll do the task force, which is the bigger line. So yeah, all right. So the show starts off, along with this being the Tupac show, it starts off with Afeni, and we see Afeni, I don't know where she is. I think it looks like Atlanta or Georgia or something of that nature, but she's at her new house that we don't know this is her house, and she's having a good moment and just kind of gardening and doing her thing, and she gets the call that Tupac's been shot, and he's in the hospital in Vegas, and it's really bad, and it's worse than before, and she makes the trip out there. So now she's in Vegas. She shows up to the hospital, and she comes to Tupac's side, and Tupac wakes up at this point, and he sees his mom, Afeni, and she's just talking to him and trying to, make sure that he's okay, and he can't talk, and it's real sad and real powerful moments. I mean, I must admit, just the acting alone by Mark Rose, just the non-verbal acting he did was just amazing. Just, you could see the pain and the struggle in his eyes, that he's really playing the scene up, and you can see the pain that is really going on in both Afeni and Tupac's eyes when this very, very tremendous moment is happening. I mean, this is his death, and it's bad. So that happens, and then you kind of get this kind of cool moment where the doctor, introduces himself, and Afeni goes, "What's going on?" And she goes, he says, "What's wrong?" She goes, "What's wrong with Tupac?" And he's like, "I've always been a fan, and I always thought Tupac was a stage name." So I kind of like that little moment to show that out of all the rappers that have all these different names, Tupac's name is actually his own authentic name because of his black militant mother, who was part of the Black Panthers and knew what a name represented, the symbolism and things of that nature. So really great. Just that whole element, I loved all of that. And then we jump to 1991, and we get the famous Oakland scene where Tupac was jaywalking across the street, and in the movie All Eyes on Me, it's actually at night, and in this one we see it during the day. Cool little hint, that is downtown LA, sorry, but I know that area because it's next to this really cool video game bar splash area, so that was kind of funny to see, but they kind of play it as Oakland. And the same incident happens where he walks across the street, these two white cops come up to him and start harassing him. They ask him for his ID, and in this one they just start making fun of his name, saying that what kind of name is Tupac, and downgrading him, and he cusses them out and tells them off, and they get pissed off and beat the living mess out of him, and he ends up in a holding cell, and you get this really, really great moment and speech by Mark Rose on playing the Tupac character, and just this powerful, powerful speech about how a black man can't get anywhere in this world and is always brought down. And then the great line that he says is he didn't have a record until he had a record deal. And I thought that was awesome, that showing that a black man in America, once he gets power, is on the list and is more targeted than anything, and is more watched after. I mean, it's been proven and shown. There are actual declassified FBI files that you can find where the FBI was following and monitoring Tupac for his whole life. I mean, it's ridiculous how much information they had on this man when he was just an entertainer. He was an actor and a rap artist, a poet, and different things, and they treated him like he was some world-class criminal selling drugs. I mean, it was just nonsense, absolute nonsense. But I love the symmetry and what it shows and the different things and how he had to really deal with it. So, great scene by him. And then it jumps back to Pac again, and it jumps back to Pac in the hospital, and things are not going well. And Afeni's with them, and she has this memory of when Pac brings her to this new house that he bought for her, and introducing her to this house and everything she ever wanted. And I kind of like how she goes, he tells her, "This is everything you dreamed of for all the pain," and she goes, "No, that was your pain." I kind of like how her life and the things that happened to her and the things that she did and affected him was the pain that he had to get through, and this was kind of helping him get through all that pain by, at the end of the day, he gets to help his mom and get her this house that she always wanted with the garden to cultivate and things of that nature. It was just, the scenes that they did with Afeni and Pac were just beautiful. I mean, they were beautiful scenes. And then you get this, you get the prayer circle towards the end, and you know, they're doing the prayer circle, and Afeni's praying, and she's in there with Pac, and they're just holding his hands, and he can't speak, and he can't breathe, and he starts to code's blue, and they try to resuscitate him, and they're trying to resuscitate him, they're trying to bring him back to life, and then she finally makes the call and just says, let him rest in peace, and she just wanted him to go. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a very, very powerful moment. It got me choked up. I thought it was really done well by the actress playing Afeni, Mark Rose. I'm telling you, the way he was just acting in those scenes, the emotions around it, it was done beautifully. I will give that the scenes that they did give us of Pac and Afeni were beautiful scenes. They just weren't enough. I mean, there are so many little stories they could have shown of his character, different things. I mean, they gave you this cool little clip of him, the little boy, reading on his stairwell. I thought that was great scenes. Great stuff. And that's the kind of information I think us as fans, everybody wants. We want to see the things that we don't know about. I know this is the unsolved murders of them, but you're giving us their life stories and their backstories. So give us more of that. I mean, the cops that are involved, they don't really matter. So that's just kind of how I see it. So let's jump into Mr. Poole, the one who got everything going on. So it's 1998, and the things they're showing of Poole, I mean, I get it. They're trying to show this man and how he came to this breaking point and how he ended up writing this book. But a lot of these scenes are a lot for nothing. So he starts off, he's with his family, he's all happy, he's weeks out of the job, showing him that he's in good spirits now that he's not a cop anymore, and he's off the job, and he's doing good, and he's helping coach his kid and teaching him a curveball, and everything's great. And they show some good stuff, and then shows that his story just came out in the LA Times, his wife bought a bunch of newspapers, she's very proud of it, and everything's going good. So the next time you see him, he's going for an interview for a big security firm, and they're telling him how proud they are of him and how he stepped out and talked all this good stuff and everything was great. And you're starting to feel good for Poole. And then, of course, when everything seems like it's going good for Poole after all this whole deal, you get the big world-famous press conference that Chief Parks had, and Chief Parks basically discredits him on every single thing that he said and brought up about Pac and Biggie and the conspiracies. I mean, he goes at him cold. He says it's all speculation, and this is when Poole starts to snap in his head. You can see the change in him. I love the way the actor is completely just pulling off the different variations. When you first see him, you can see he's reacting a little crazy. The next time they go to him, he's waiting to go to practice, and he's really getting under his skin. And you can see that really bugged him, that the LAPD has now come out and just really lambasted him and really just taken him down. So I thought that was a really good way they did it. They show, you know, he goes to his storage unit that we see in the future that obviously gets turned over to the task force later, but it shows at that point that he had all his files and he kept everything. He was very smart and tidy with his stuff, and that's what helps him to write the book. So the next time we do get to see him is we jump all the way to 2002, which I thought was crazy. I mean, this is 5 years now after the thing, and it is really done beautifully well by Valletta Wallace and the actress playing Valletta Wallace. So he has a meeting with Valletta Wallace, Miss Wallace, and her lawyer, and he's talking about how he always wants to get justice for her, and she's just pissed. She's like, it's been 5 years and nothing. Of course I remember you. Nothing has happened, nothing for Pac. And he's like, well, I hope I have a little, you know, to bring a little justice to him. She goes, do you know who killed my son? And he goes, I think I do. And he breaks out the famous book, The LA Labyrinth, and his explanation on everything and what is this whole story is based off of. So hopefully we get some good verification in the next 3 episodes at the end. But I mean, we've kind of run our course with Poole. He's done all this stuff. Now we got the book, so we'll see how it connects with the task force and everything else going forward. But they kind of minimize Poole, which I get. I feel like they should have given us way more Pac stuff, especially when you call the episode Tupac. I mean, that's just kind of crazy. So that's really it for Poole. He didn't really have much either. He just, you know, gets his famous stuff, meets Mrs. Wallace, Valletta Wallace, and gets his book out. So that has future things to come. All right, so let's get to the big chunk of this story of this week, which actually takes place on the task force, which is kind of surprising since the episode's called Tupac and it's more about the task force and chasing after Keithy D again. So here we are again. We meet up with Kane, and This does have a cool little opening. I do like the way they set this up. So Kane is about to go to a meeting with the brass again and the chief of police, and he's about to basically tell them where their case is now with the whole Keithy D. And I like that his task force is there, and they kind of don't trust him for what he's gonna tell the brass, because they know that everything pins on what he's gonna tell the brass. So they kind of want him to go over his speech right then and there. And I like how he starts telling his speech, but it clicks to him in front of the brass telling his speech, and then it clicks back to his people telling him, okay, good start, all right, you got the room, like showing the difference in how he really fine-tuned his speech with the help of his crew to make sure that they get their point across to the brass. So what is their point they're trying to get to the brass? Is that they now have Keithy D in the box, and they have him on a PCP bus, and they're going to get him for whatever, and they're going to use Keithy D to try to get at Zip, who was basically Diddy's boy, Puff Daddy's boy, Diddy, I'm calling him Diddy, Puff Daddy's boy, who set up the whole, Suge and Tupac kid and did the whole thing and gave him the gun and everything. So they want him to go after Zip. Now, Zip's in New York. So they go to the brass and they start telling him about this is what they want to do. And he's like, but how's this really going to solve anything? And he goes, look, don't you think that we should at least have it get out that the LAPD helped solve the Tupac case? And then you can see it in the chief's face that he sees that even though they might not get Biggie out of all this, if they do solve the Tupac case, it would be a big win because it would be big headlines for the LAPD showing that they helped solve a case that was supposedly unsolvable from the Las Vegas PD. So there's that whole I did like the back and forth with the task force and showing everything. So now Dupree, Kane, and Keithy D are going to go fly out to New York to meet up with Zip. At the same time, the other two members of the task force are going to start digging into all of Suge's known associates, trying to find a connection to see if Suge is still dirty, because like they've always said, once a drug dealer, always a drug dealer, so they feel like Suge is still doing dirt, even though it's behind bars and everything is going bad, but that's what they think. So we get to New York. They're having, they build up some kind of weird fake tension in the car, kind of get some conversation at midpoints, but a lot of it is just all for nothing because they try to build it up like everything's going to be nervous and that this meet sit down is going to be weird, but everything just goes smooth. They did it last week with the whole drug buzz in the PCP, which I didn't mind, but you can't repeat the exact same thing back to back and make us think that we're going to, something's going to happen. I the whole time they were trying to ratchet up the tension, I felt like, he's going to be fine, he's going to come back and something different is going to change. And of course, that's exactly what happened. He comes back and tells him basically, Zip's out the game, he's got cancer and dying, and they really don't have, and he's like, they're messed up, and he's like, look, no, don't worry, we will go at his nephew because he's still in the game, and that'll get us still the closest connection. And they just kind of go with it at this point because they really don't have any more options because they've locked themselves into this Keithy D and the PCP bus and trying to get to Zip and trying to move things up the ladder because they don't really have any more angles to solve this case. So they're doing that at the same time. The people in LA are looking into Suge stuff, and they're having fun conversations talking about all the different things that was Suge, and just the whole Suge thing. And they're basically talking about how looking into Suge and how they say that you ever heard of this guy called Greg the Butcher? He's like he straight out cold clock and knocked out Suge in one punch. She's like, damn. The girl's like, damn. And then she's like, between the prison bid and the death of death row. I mean, Suge was just going through it, and he was going through it. This wasn't even the truly bad thing, because now Suge is even worse. I mean, Suge got shot up at a club in front of Chris Brown, and then it almost tried to kill another dude on the set of Straight Outta Compton, and now is in jail, and who knows? I mean, that man has had a wild life since his reign, so that definitely was some fun stuff, but they're looking at different ways to go at all those different homeboys. They're having fun with all the different nicknames, and all those different things happen. It's fun scenes, but I just don't feel like a lot of the emphasis is put so much on there, and you really don't need to focus on that. And then this is where I really don't know where they're going with it. So then after that, we get to see Kane in case on a pretrial for his other case, the Cruz case. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just kind of figuring out what it is. And he gets up on there, and basically the attorney for this other gentleman, I'm assuming a drug deal or something of some other sorts, is up there trying to discredit Kane and say that he bribed witnesses or harassed them or offered them services or goods or things like that. And it's just this crazy kind of dynamic. He's up on the stand trying to answer the questions. He's looking at the DA. The DA is not even paying attention to him, blowing him off, and he's just kind of like, what's going on? And I'm like, what does this have to do with Tupac and Biggie, and why do we need to see this little moment? Was this like a fill-in? Is this going to show us at the end that the Cruz case affected? I don't know. It was kind of weird they went to this whole thing and had the whole conversation, the walkthrough, and the talk with the district attorney. I just thought it was kind of pointless. I just didn't get why that was put in there. So they go do that. they did have a funny line in there. He's asking Kane about the whole, like, you know, did you have any money or bribe anybody? He's like, I work for the LAPD. I have no money. I thought that was kind of funny, the line he gave. But they do that whole thing. At the same time, the other task force members figure out this truck that is run by one of the associates of Suge, and he keeps going back and forth to Mexico. So they think he's taking drugs back and forth. So they put a tracker on him, see that he's taking like 5 trips. They go and do a truck stop. They pull over the truck. There's barely anything in it. They open it up and they just find out it's like adult magazines he had in there. And he's like got his little side hustle where he takes magazines back and forth and makes a little thing. So that all comes to nothing. So the task force once again has painted themselves into a corner and has no idea what they're doing. They failed at all the different things. They thought they got better with the zip. That kind of really didn't go nowhere. They thought they had a Suge associate that was still running cocaine to Mexico. They were hoping that didn't go well. So they've kind of put this whole falling into the end, and they kind of get back and they start looking at information about this guy and seeing the driver's license, and they think they failed. And then the lady on the task force comes back with a thing and shows that the guy that's been feeding them information actually was named Amir. His name was Amir, and got a new driver's license changed out after 1995, and changed his name to, I forgot what they said, but he was the actual named Amir back in the days. So more likely, and what you see when Kane figures it out, is that they've been getting played this whole time. That this guy that they thought was their informant was actually the shooter and has been sitting them on this wild goose chase, and that's why they're not really getting anywhere, and they've only kind of stumbled into some things like Keithy D and the way they got to zip and things of that nature. And they really are feeling stupid now. So I do like how it all ends, that they kind of got the wool pulled over their eyes, and there's going to be a deeper thing to this whole case, and there's more to it. But they definitely did a whole lot of running around and back and forth on an episode that was named after Tupac. So that kind of bugged me. Well, that is episode 8, Tupac Amaru Shakur. So like I said, I love this show. It's been great. Other than episode 3 and now episode 8, the show has been lots of highs, lots of great blending of the episodes. This one I feel like really missed the mark. I feel like you're going to call this episode Tupac and dedicate it to him. Then it should be a bigger episode about Pac and his life and the different aspects and things that might tie into things, instead of just showing his deathbed and really nothing much else about him. So kind of bugged me. Well, there you go, folks. Well, I don't know if you guys are watching Atlanta. Got last week's Atlanta right here. Champagne Poppy. Also, in case you missed last week's episode 7, Half the Job, right here of Unsolved. Check that out. There you go. Until next time, folks. Good night, Ted.